Another world, bone-chilling wind, mysterious ice, hard as iron. It was a forbidden mountain range. Snowstorms have been raging here for thousands of years. To the east of the forbidden mountain range, there were dark forests and merciless times. People were plunged into poverty. Corpses of dead people lay on the roads, and carts passed by them quietly. There have been countless murders here, where vultures devour the remains of flesh, and all these are just games for the nobility. The strong devour the weak. Only the strongest survive. Somewhere in the market, people were shouting and shouting for customers to buy their goods, and a guy on a cart passed by carrying 2 chests with him. His name is Liu Feng. It had already been more than a month since he arrived in this mysterious other world, although he had made a lot of money selling goods back and forth between Earth and this world, but so far, he hadn't gotten a place to stay. And now he thinks it's time to look for a temporary place to live. The guy went into the tavern, got himself a mug, and turned to the owner. He asked her if she would sell the tavern to him, which surprised her. But Liu Feng again insisted that she sell the place to him. The owner, shocked, told him that this small shop was completely empty and once again asked him if he really wanted to buy it. She concluded by saying that she really hoped he wasn't crazy. Liu Feng just laughed and thought that he wanted to find a place to stay in this city. Moreover, this place is located in the city center and without competition, and that if you open a hotel here, you can earn a lot of money. So with a smile, he turned back to the owner and said that she just needed to sell him the tavern. The girl angrily replied that it wasn't for sale. But Liu Feng continued to bargain. He almost shouted that he could pay her a lot of money, and in doing so, he attracted the attention of the guests of this tavern. A man asked Liu Feng, does he have a lot of money? And he said that then he could just buy the city. Liu Feng looked back at the man in shock and asked about the city again. The man called the guy his friend and said that it was so. It was an elderly man, Baron Carter, and next to him was a young boy, Carter's son, named Fesca. Liu Feng also thought to himself, isn't this his regular customer, Baron Carter, the city Lord Xi Yang? This miser has enough money, so why does he want to sell the city? Aloud, he turned to the harrow and asked if this earth was not his life's foundation. Why he wants to sell it? Baron Carter smiled, exhaled, and said he was getting old. And the younger generation can't live up to his expectations. He just wants to sell his holdings so that he can go to the big city, retire and forget all about it. Liu Feng made a displeased face with a hint of suspicion. Inwardly, he thought that Baron Carter was mocking him, and that he's a sly old fox. But still, he asked how much they wanted for the city. The old man grinned and said that he only needed 100 gold coins. Liu Feng seethed with rage and shouted that he had lost his mind. 100 gold coins equals 4 million sheep equals 500,000 cows equals sit and wait for death for 3 generations. Liu Feng thought about the latter and imagined the beautiful girls surrounding the guy. Also that he's not stupid, and not a newbie who just arrived in this world. Baron Carter said, is that too expensive? And he said that then he would also grant Liu Feng a noble title. Liu Feng crossed his arms and calmly said that he was refusing. Fez abruptly held a knife to Liu Feng's neck and said that he should be satisfied that his father had offered to buy the city for him. And how dare he refuse? Liu Feng angrily asked him if he was forcing him to buy the city. Baron Carter stepped between them and said contentedly that harmony brought wealth, and if it was a question of price, they could discuss it. He asked Liu Feng how many gold coins he thought were suitable. Liu Feng spread his hands to the side and said that there was no question of 100 gold coins if he didn't even have 30 gold coins. Baron Carter beamed and said good luck, just for 30 gold coins. Agreed. Liu Feng was shocked and thought that Baron Carter wanted to sell the city for 30 gold coins. He wasn't trying to trick him. Baron Carter, still smiling happily, said that as soon as he saw Liu Feng, he immediately wanted to make a special offer. Liu Feng replied that he didn't have that kind of money with him. Baron Carter replied that the guy could also use some of his jewelry to make up for the missing amount. Liu Feng immediately became alert and thought of the jewels. Baron Carter went on to say that, for example, jewelry such as crystal glasses or something like that. I thought about the trunks the guy was carrying. Liu Feng was surprised when he heard about the crystal goblets, and he thought to himself that they had been deep in conversation for some time, and it turned out that Baron Carter was not taking his eyes off his glasses, which were in the chests. This is something that has traveled tens of thousands of miles on Earth in a place in the Far East and from the most popular stores. Yihue Run Loi Store welcomes you, the sign read. There was also a special offer of 10 yuan for 5 glasses, and signs called out to customers, telling them to hurry to get 5 glasses at the best price. Liu Feng took out a chest of glasses and Carter, and his son's eyes lit up with interest and happiness. Baron Carter took the glass to look at and said that he had once been lucky enough to see a crystal glass in the Duke's courtyard. Yet it was as clear and magnificent as this one. Liu Feng thought in shock that they only needed crystal glasses and that people from this world were too easily deceived. Meanwhile, Baron Carter and his son were happily and charmingly inspecting the glass. They said it was really great. Liu Feng also thought, if he had known about this earlier, he would have brought back a few more, and that, in any case, he can go back and forth between this world and Earth once a day. Baron Carter called Liu Feng a friend and happily asked if he had any other treasures. Liu Feng thought to himself that this bastard wanted to see if he still had anything of value left, and even if he did have something, it wasn't good. After all, they clearly want to kill Liu Feng for the goods. Liu Feng thought that if only one glass counted as a treasure, then he would just collect his treasures and put them in his storage, and see what Baron Carter does then. Aloud, he said that he would open his chest for them to see. In the chest were necessary and interesting things from Earth, as well as a couple of ordinary saucers. Liu Feng placed his hand on the chest, and an electric charge passed through it. And then all the interesting things from Earth disappeared. Baron Carter was beaming in anticipation of the treasure. Liu Feng opened the chest and said that these were his other things. There were just a couple of very ordinary saucers and a rag. Liu Feng happily turned to Baron Carter and asked if he needed anything. Baron Carter was upset and said he didn't need these things yet. Liu Feng asked him if he was sure, and he said it was very unfortunate. Liu Feng and Baron Carter and his son were driving through the wheat fields. The Baron just said that these are wheat farms near Yang City. Liu Feng said that he was also growing quite well. Baron Carter said of course, although one must beware of horse thieves who come to rob grain during the autumn harvest. He spoke to Liu Feng, pointed to the city in front of him, and said that Yang City was located here. Liu Feng saw a beautiful city in the form of a huge castle. He lit up his eyes with delight and said that it was totally worth the price. Baron Carter coughed into his fist and said wasn't there. At the fork in the path, he pointed to another path instead of the one Liu Feng was looking at. When the guy turned around in that direction, the Baron pointed and proudly said that this was their only Yang City. There was a ruined village that was about to collapse altogether soon. Liu Feng was upset and said that he should have guessed. He thought, even if the money was pouring in, he still wouldn't be able to get any of it. They stopped at Yang City. As Liu Feng drove past, he noticed poorly dressed people begging for food. Some spat after the newcomers and called them parasites, and some asked them to take pity and serve them. They arrived at the bell tower. A bell rang out, calling all the residents to gather. People didn't understand that this time. Some suggested that maybe they want to introduce new taxes or something like that. Someone shouted and asked when they would leave them alone, and someone asked them to keep their voices down so that these parasites could not hear them. Baron Carter addressed the people from the bell tower, calling them his favorite countrymen. He introduced himself and said that he was announcing today that he would grant the title of Baron to Baron Liu Feng, and he said that from this day forward he would be the lord of this city. Some of the people were glad that they could only hope that this new Baron wouldn't raise any more taxes on them. And someone told them not to even think about it, and they said this new Baron was just another blood-sucking parasite. Baron Carter turned to Liu Feng, called him the city lord, and said that Yang City was in his hands, and now he was leaving on his own. He asked Liu Feng to continue his speech. Liu Feng went to this little balcony to see the people and greeted them all. Happily, he began to say that starting today, he would. But before he could finish, People started shouting at him to get lost and calling him a parasite and a bloodsucker. They shouted that all the people's money had already been spent by people like him. Someone even threw a rock, shouting down with the parasites and bloodsuckers. Someone shouted that they should start a riot and beat him. Liu Feng thought that it was no wonder that Carter had sold this city to him so cheaply. While the people were rioting and expressing their discontent, Baron Carter was showing his discontent to the affected people. He said he was seriously wounded and had been on hunger strike for 7 days, and he asked them how it was that they couldn't defeat him with so many people. The injured people called him master and said that he was too strong, and that, to be honest, they were not able to bring him. Barona Carter got angry and said that they were completely useless, but then an idea popped into his head. He mounted his horse and shouted to Liu Feng, addressing him as the lord of the city. Liu Feng heard him and pricked up his ears. Baron Carter Milo said that he left him a secret gift in the castle dungeon. Liu Feng asked again about the gift, to which Baron Carter replied that he should go and see it right now, and if he was late, the castle would be destroyed. Liu Feng shouted, asking Wu, the castle will be demolished, and he rushed to this castle, saying what the hell is inside the dungeon. Liu Feng entered the castle and went to the dungeon. Large rats ran along the way, and torches burned on the walls. Liu Feng walked through the dungeon and looked at the torture instruments that were also present there. Aloud, he asked what the hell gift Baron Carter had left in this place. Then Liu Feng came across a cage. He asked loudly if anyone was there. He shone his fanner, but saw nothing, and then he asked again if anyone was here. There's silence in response. Then he took and pulled the bars of the cage, hoping that everything was old and they would open. But instead, the wall around the edges of the bars began to crumble. Liu Feng noticed this and said that it was bad because it was falling. Then the guy jumped and dodged to the left, then jumped to the right so that the bars wouldn't fall on him. When he jumped back, he dared to ask Grid if she still thought she might fall on him. And he wanted to say without a chance, as the bars fell on his toes. Liu Feng screamed in pain. As he shuffled inside the cage, almost crying, he said it hurt like hell. To himself, he wondered what it was. And I saw something lying on the hay near the wall. He thought it was a girl cat. So there really are folklore races in this world. He sat down beside her and told her to wake up. He took her by the shoulder and asked her if she was still alive. The cat girl whispered for water. Liu Feng looked at her and wondered if this was the gift Lord Carter had mentioned, and he thought that he couldn't just do nothing and watch her die. Liu Feng concentrated, stretched out his hand, and magic waves shot out from it, which formed a portal. In that portal were boxes with various and other things from the world of Earth. Liu Feng started to say out loud, looking at his things, that he needed to find something good for her to drink, seeing how weak she is right now, and he said it would be better if she had some energy drinks. He reached through the portal for a box of drinks. Selecting a bottle, he poured some of the liquid into her mouth. The cat girl hummed, squeezed her eyes shut, and opened them abruptly. She spat out the entire contents directly at Liu Feng. He immediately started coughing, and the cat girl didn't waste any time, kneed him right in the face. Liu Feng flew away and wondered what was going on. The cat girl started jumping back and forth in the cell, moving from one corner to the other too fast. She leaped at the guy, let out a meow, and was about to deliver the final blow. Liu Feng screamed for help and thought that this was the end. His entire life began to flash through his mind. He thought he was going to die, but he doesn't want to die. After all, he still hadn't married a fair-skinned, rich, and beautiful woman, and it didn't reach its peak in life. Abruptly stopping his screeching, he noticed that the girl cat was lying on top of him. Aloud, he asked the void if it had fainted. With a relieved sigh, he said that he was safe. He carried her to one of the castle rooms and laid her on the bed. He looked at her and swore. He said that to think that she could be so beautiful. The mysterious cat girl's name was Mina. Liu Feng looked at her and wondered why Carter had locked her in the dungeon. Mina's stomach rumbled loudly. He was slightly embarrassed and wondered if, considering what the Baron had said earlier, she might have fainted from hunger. Liu Feng opened the teleport again and said that he seemed to remember that he still had some rice in his storage. He'll get it out and make porridge. When the teleport was opened, it created some waves of wind, from which a piece of paper lying on the table flew across the balcony and fell directly on the face of a poor passerby. It was an old man. He took the paper off his face, cursed, and asked what that thing was. When he read the contents, he was completely shocked. He started shouting and calling people to come to him and see it. Liu Feng also made porridge. He scooped it into a spoon, blew on it a little, and popped the spoon into Mina's mouth. The cat girl swallowed the contents, her consciousness starting to return to her. She thought it smelled so good. Is it rice porridge? Opening her eyes abruptly, she pushed herself up from the bed. She looked at Liu Feng and got angry, shouting that it was him again. She leaped at him and grabbed him by the throat. She raised her hand to strike and told him to say that he made her eat it. The guy, despite the fact that his throat was squeezed, somehow said that it was rice porridge. Mina loosened her grip and looked down at his hands, which were holding a bowl of porridge. She thought she was so close. She said it was really rice porridge and what a nice smell. But Mina immediately pulled herself together and began to say in her head that she should keep her temper in check. After all, people can't be so kind. She hadn't forgotten how she'd been caught, but her stomach was rumbling treacherously. She got off Li Fen, pointed her finger at him, and angrily told him to eat a bowl full of this rice porridge. Li Feng said well and even drank it off the plate, while Mina watched with fascination. Li Feng seemed to blossom from how delicious and satisfying it was. He said it was very good and belched. Mina got even angrier and told him to eat more this time. Liu Feng agreed and said that he would eat until there was nothing left and raised the plate to his lips again. The cat girl watched him and thought that if he really wanted to harm her, he would have had the opportunity to do so just a moment ago. So there will be nothing wrong with this porridge. Then she asked for another cup, and again another cup, and again, and again, and again another. Li Feng, holding a bowl, asked her if she was okay. Mina was sitting at a table filled with empty cups. She hiccuped and said she was full. Li Feng looked at this and thought that she had just eaten a month's worth of his rice. Mina came to her senses and wondered what had just happened, and that people are too terrible. She coughed and ordered him to let her go immediately, or else she would kill him. Liu Feng fell into a stupor. He thought that she had just eaten all of his rice porridge, and she was immediately turning her back on him. Aloud, he pointed to the door and told her that no one was stopping her. The door was over there. Mina headed for the door and heard the guy tell her to be careful out there, and to make sure that she doesn't get caught by Carter and other bandits in the future. Mina also thought that Liu Feng seemed to be different from the other nobles. The guy smiled at her and winked. Mina was a little embarrassed. But then she heard something, and she whirled around to face Liu Feng and lunged at him, saying that he was a scoundrel and that there was an ambush outside. Mina grabbed Liu Feng by the throat, said that he was a scoundrel and that there was an ambush outside. Poor Liu Feng, almost the executioner, said that he was the only one in the entire castle who could possibly be ambushed. I asked her how many times it had already happened. Maybe she could push him somewhere else. He asked her if she was trying to rip his head off. There was a commotion from the locked gate. People gathered near the castle and shouted that they were parasites, that they were bloodsuckers, shouted to open the gate. Some of them shouted that they would not let them live anyway, because death to them. Mina continued to hold onto Liu Feng's neck and fiercely told him that he was still saying that he hadn't deceived her. The guy told her that he didn't know what was going on. Rioting people entered the castle and shouted outside the closed doors, behind which were Liu Feng and Ming. People shouted that they should be killed. They took a log to break down the doors. Among these people there was a certain thin key, and they began to beat with a log. Liu Feng turned to Mina and said that they weren't his people, and that she needed to hide faster. The cat girl maliciously asked the question, what? The guy told her that if he really wanted to hurt her, she would have been dead long ago. Mina didn't respond to his words, but she was a little surprised. The crowd broke down the doors and Hexen Key was among the first to break through. He saw Liu Feng and shouted that there he was, and to keep people from letting him escape. They surrounded one Liu Feng and started poking him with everything sharp that the common people had.
Liu Feng angrily asked what he was doing. but then he was addressed as the city lord. It was Old Man Ba Fu, who had been hit by the leaf. He said they were already destitute and had nothing left. He asked Liu Feng why he was still trying to collect taxes. Liu Feng shouted that he didn't order the taxes to be collected and asked the old man if that was the case. Old Man Ba Fu showed him the hand that was holding the same piece of paper and asked the guy what it was then. Liu Feng thought that it wasn't his, and that half a month ago, didn't he sell a batch of straw paper to Baron Carter as sheepskin parchment? Out loud, Liu Feng asked that it was a sheepskin parchment, wasn't it? And he said that if they wanted to ask where this parchment came from, it probably flew out of his castle. But people kept saying that it turns out that Liu Feng won't stop collecting taxes anyway, and that he still wants to live them out of the world. Someone said that his younger brother had starved to death a few days ago, and that Liu Feng still wants to introduce more taxes. People called him the devil incarnate. Liu Feng himself thought that they must be joking. He only sold a batch of straw paper, so why did he incur the wrath of all these people? And the people grew more and more angry and continued to rebel. They shouted that if he did not let them live, then they would not let him live either. They shouted that they should kill Liu Feng. Xin Qi swung his sickle at the guy and shouted that he was going to kill him. But someone knocked the sickle out of the guy's hand with a stone, so that the gun flew to the floor. It was Mina. She crawled out of her hiding place and shouted to the people to control themselves. Xin Qi asked her who the hell she was, and Mina kept saying that according to the law, if the common people kill someone from the nobility, all those who rebelled, as well as their family members, will all be sentenced to death by hanging. The people came to their senses and moderated their ardor. They started saying that she was right. And one of them, a man, said that it doesn't matter to him if he dies, but as for his 2 children. Liu Feng thought, didn't he tell her to hide? So why? But then Mina asked him if he was okay. Liu Feng imagined himself with a sickle in his head and replied listlessly that well, probably yes. The girl grunted. Old Man Ba Fu asked angrily, so what? He showed the contents of the parchment and said that Liu Feng would raise their taxes by 50%. And he asked how this was different from directly putting them to death. Liu Feng fell into shock. He picked up the parchment and studied it. It said notification. To celebrate the birthday of the city lord's favorite horse, taxes will be increased by another 50% from this day on. Specific taxes include the following: road tax, wheat transport tax, marriage tax, childbirth tax, sleep tax, sun tax, and was signed Carter. Liu Feng, when he read all this, wondered what the fuck. And I also thought that all this fuss was actually because of this notification, and that this Carter guy was using him as a scapegoat. He turned this permanent to the people and told them to look carefully. This notice was issued by the previous city lord. The people pondered and began to talk. Xin Qi angrily shouted that it didn't matter if it was the previous lord. Aren't they all members of the same group? The guy calmly said that he was Liu Feng, and that he, the current city lord, and in the name of the city lord, he declares that the citizens of Ziyang City will never see their taxes raised again. While saying this, Liu Feng tore the parchment into pieces and threw them up, surprising all the people. People didn't understand and asked if it was a joke. Someone was asking if they could actually believe the nobleman's words. But there were also those who shouted that Liu Feng had torn the ad to pieces, and if it was true, then there would be enough food for everyone. Liu Feng had said that only by supporting the happiness of their citizens could they, the city lords, be happy. And he said that he would guide everyone in acquiring wealth and strive for an era of peace and prosperity. But to do this, they need to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty. People thought that although they really didn't understand it, it seemed pretty amazing. Old Man Ba Fu said that if this was really the case, then they were thanking him for this great kindness and grace. Liu Feng, happy and satisfied, said that of course it was true, because he was Liu Feng, and he would never go back on his word. The crowd began to disperse. Among them, someone said that he hoped that what the city lord said was true. Someone said that it would be great if this was the case, and someone suggested that we first go back and see what happens.
In one tavern sat Baron Carter and his son Fez. Fesca said that he had heard that Kaiyan City had already become a complete mess, and that a group of peasants broke into the city lord's mansion. Baron Carter replied that it looked like he was too worried that the horse thieves hadn't shown up yet. And he didn't expect that Liu Feng wouldn't even be able to keep a bunch of peasants under control. Happy Fez said yes, and it looked like the city of Yan would be back in their hands much sooner than they expected. And he said that my father was really great. Then someone called out to my lord that it was bad news. Something's wrong. An unknown old man burst into the tavern where Baron Carter and Fesca were sitting. The old man turned to the Baron, called him his lord, and said he had bad news. and that the unexpected happened. Fesca, sipping from a mug, asked what had happened to make the old man so excited. To which the old man replied that Liu Feng had already convinced the people to disperse, and he had also released this female beast. Fez put the mug down on the table with a loud sound and asked, Liu Feng just let go of the female beast, and he said he was going to stab the bastard to death. Baron Carter said calm down. Fesca was indignant, and he turned to his father and said that they had spent a lot of money to buy this female beast. Baron Carter calmly stroked his mustache and asked his son what the hurry was for. He also said that Liu Feng was now the city lord, and that it won't be long before Baron Omar puts him in his place. Fez had an epiphany. He immediately understood and said that his father was very wise. The sun was already setting, and Liu Feng was lying on his bed, resting. He said it scared the hell out of him, and now finally it's almost cold. Exhaling, he thought he needed to lie down a little longer. Mina was in his room, standing next to his bed. She said that she would definitely leave now. Liu Feng opened his eyes, got up from the bed, and told her to stop. Her wounds haven't healed yet. Mina was already at the door and wanted to leave, but she stopped and listened to him. And he also said that if she went out like this, wouldn't someone else catch her like last time? The girl turned to him and said angrily that she would just kill them. Liu Feng exhaled and told her that she could stay here for a while. Until he healed his wounds, he wouldn't leave, and in any case, there was nothing he could do to her. I asked her if that was true. Mina told him that people were always up to mischief. I asked the guy how he could be so good. Liu Feng smiled radiantly and said that it was very boring to be alone in the castle, and if she stayed and kept him company, they could chat. Mina said nothing to indicate that she agreed. Liu Feng asked her so she wasn't afraid that he would kill her, to which Mina replied that not a bit of it. And Liu Feng continued to say that besides, since she was so strong, if she wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be difficult for her. Warm water filled the tub. Mina stripped off her rags and waded into the warm, gentle water. She thought that she felt so good now, and that it had been a long time since she had had a good bath. She touched her hand where the big bruise was and hissed in pain. She said that everything hurts, and that people are disgusting. She recalled being in prison, fighting her hunger, and then a man comes in with a basket of bread in his hands. He called Mina a poor girl and asked her if she was hungry, and he showed her the bread, saying that it was food for her. Mina's eyes shone with joy, and she ate what she was given. After that, she immediately fell asleep. She could hear people standing around talking. The man who brought her the bread told someone that it was a top-quality item, worth at least 1 silver coin, and she heard another voice say that he was buying. Barely opening her eyes, Mina saw that the person who had just bought it was Baron Carter. Mina threw up her hands and said that they were cunning people, and that they were all just liars. Standing outside the bathroom door was Liu Feng. He kept glancing at the girl and thought that even though it wasn't good, he still wanted to know the differences between humans and beastmen. He thought that he was only here to broaden his horizons. Liu Feng continued to spy on the cat girl. Her beauty made his nose bleed. He thought it was too awesome. Mina heard some sounds and screamed, asking who was there. Liu Feng outside the door said it was him, and that he brought her something to wash with. He opened the door a crack and threw a bar of soap at it. Mina didn't know what it was. She sniffed it and thought it smelled really nice, and that the smell of that person. Liu Feng was lying on the sofa and said out loud that he almost got caught, but luckily he was quick-witted. Aloud, he asked if cats were not afraid of water and if he needed to prepare a tray for it. However, asking her about such things is a bit awkward. When Mina slightly opened the door, Liu Feng immediately got up from the sofa. He picked up a piece of paper from the table and began to pretend to work. Mina entered the room and then Liu Feng glanced at her. The girl timidly said that these things didn't seem to suit her. She was wearing only a long white shirt. Liu Feng drew blood from his nose at the sight and thought that the washed cap was a girl. This is the kind of thing that could only be seen in the other world. Mina saw the look in his eyes, and with a touch of anger and embarrassment, asked him what he was looking at. And she began to cover herself with her hands. Liu Feng timidly replied that no matter what. He coughed, pointed at the plate of food, and said that he had prepared some rice porridge for her. Mina was glad in her mind that rice porridge, and her mouth watered. Out loud, she said that she liked rice porridge, but as she tried to throw something out, Li Feng interrupted her and said that he swore that he wouldn't dare. Mina finished that she was going to kill him and picked up a plate of rice porridge. And she said that in any case, they are people always planning something bad. Li Feng confusedly told her that he was different. Mina sat down on a chair with a cup in her hands and said that it was a good thing he wasn't the same, because he was a person who spied on someone washing up. Li Feng was startled and thought that he had been discovered, and that if people found out about it, how would he live in this city? The girl ate porridge and thought that it was so delicious, and that for the sake of this rice porridge, out loud, she told Li Feng that she thought he should pick up his things as soon as possible, and that she thinks that in a few days he won't want to work as a lord anymore, but will just wet himself and run away. Li Feng asked her in shock. Mina ate all the porridge and put the plate on the table, and she began to say that they were horse thieves. There are 20 days left until the autumn harvest. When that time comes, horse thieves will come to steal the harvest. In the end, they might leave him as well, and then they'll take over his castle, and they will become the new owners of this city. She also told him that he didn't have any knights and wasn't running away, and don't let him tell her that he wants to die. Feng also thought to himself that it was no wonder that Baron Carter had so easily sold Xianyang City and its noble title to him. And who would have thought that he dug his own grave? Mina jumped out of her chair and said it was a pity she wanted to go south. But on the other hand, she could stay and watch them stupid humans kill each other. Li Feng asked her again, does she want to watch them kill each other? I asked her if it was because she was afraid of horse thieves. Mina said resentfully that she was afraid. And she said that apart from the anger of the goddess of snow and ice, nothing frightens her. Li Feng asked her again about the goddess of snow and ice. Mina said that was true. And she said that it was all because of that terrible cold storm that lasted for 5 years. And she started telling me that 5 years ago, the goddess of snow and ice suddenly got angry, and a bone-chilling wind blew white snow falling to the horizon, turning their land into a world of ice and snow. They had no choice but to move south. However, the people's countries were also shrouded in snow and ice. She asked Liu Fen how he didn't know that. The guy hesitated, hacknelled, and said that at that time he lived far to the east. The girl raised an eyebrow and said that in any case, she thought he'd better get out of here as soon as possible, and that the main thing is not to die. Liu Feng stood up and asked with a smile, isn't it more than half a month before the autumn harvest? And he told her she didn't have to worry about him. After all, it has its own path. A young man with a smile on his face was running away from the tiger. He shouted at him to run to him. He also called him Stupid Tiger. This guy's name was Niu Wu. As he continued to run away, he kept yelling at the animal to catch him. And now a small pile of stones appeared on the way. Niu Wu jumped on top of her and started calling out to the beast. When the tiger swung its big, clawed paw at the boy, he jumped down behind the rocks and told the beast that he would not play with him again. On a hill with a spear in his hands, a man stood and watched this. Then he suddenly starts calling out names. Niu Da, Niu R, Niu San, Niu Sai. I shouted to them that it was time to start their show. 4 guys appeared out of nowhere. 2 of them had spears and their names were Niu Da and Niu R, and the other 2 held a net and their names were Niu San and Niu Sai. They shouted to the tiger to watch out for them and attacked him, so they caught a big tiger. The main man with the spear said when the tiger was tied up that the gift was ready and it was time to go. The boys agreed in unison. The carriage arrived at Xianyang City. People were interested in the arrivals. Someone asked if it wasn't the Niu family. And someone told him that ever since they refused to be hired in Baron Carter's service, they hadn't come to Xianyang City. Old man Bafu and young Sinki were watching them. The guy asked what had happened since they came. Bafu started to say that they were going to. Then a hunch struck the old man, and he asked if they had come to see Liu Feng. Sin Qi practically screamed and said that it was impossible, and that if this noble brat begged the king to come, he wouldn't be able to invite Niu Ben's family, and he said it was probably something else. and that everyone knows that Uncle New would never have ended up running errands for those leeches. Two girls were sitting on the cart, while the boys were walking behind and dragging the tiger. One of them was called Me, and said that Liu Feng was such a good guy, even though he had become a noble lord. He sent them an invitation letter. It looks like they saved the wrong person back then. The other girl, a younger one, was named Nicole. She was daydreaming about Liu Feng and longed to meet him again as soon as possible. Liu Feng shouted from the castle that he was on his way. He reached out to Uncle Newben, me, and the guys and said that he was looking forward to meeting them. The New family approached Liu Feng and said that they had a gift for him, and that they were congratulating him on becoming a city lord, and they threw the tiger's body on the floor. Liu Feng's eyes lit up with delight and said that it was unbelievable. He walked up to the tiger's body and happily asked that this guy weighed at least 300 kilograms now. And in my head, I wondered if it would be possible to make a tiger fur coat out of it. Liu Feng spoke aloud to Uncle Niu and said that they had finally arrived. I asked them what other gifts they had brought. Mina looked at the body of the dead animal and said that people are hypocritical. Mei turned to Nicole and asked her if she didn't constantly say that she wanted to see Liu Feng. She told her to come over and say hello. I gave her a little push on the shoulder to get her to go. But the girl tripped over the tiger and almost fell, but Liu Feng shouted at her to be careful and caught her in his arms. The girl clung to the guy with her body and was a little embarrassed. Liu Feng felt the girl's chest pressed against him and happily said that he hadn't seen her for a long time, and he's sure they've gotten bigger. Liu Feng then realized his mistake and swore in his mind and thought about the fact that he had said it out loud. Nicole addressed the guy as her brother Liu Feng and asked him what he meant by her getting taller. Liu Feng immediately said in his own defense that of course. He hadn't seen her in a long time, and of course she was taller, and he laughed. Standing next to Uncle Niu, Mei laughed and thought that this guy Liu Feng was becoming more and more pleasing to the eyes. Uncle Niu coughed and said that enough of these pleasantries, and it was time to talk business. He addressed his sons, calling each of them by name, and asked them to swear allegiance to Liu Feng. Liu Feng turned to Uncle Niu Ben and asked him if he was also here to not help him, and said that he still wanted Uncle Niu to be the castle's steward. The man told him that Liu Feng's kindness filled his heart, but he should know that his leg is cut off, and he can't help him in any way. Liu Feng snapped his fingers and told him to make sure he had a way to help him walk like a normal person again. The entire Niu family was surprised and looked at the guy. Liu Feng put the prosthetic leg on Uncle Niu Ben, buttoned it up, and said that everything was ready, and that Uncle Niu Ben should try to get up. The entire Niu family was excited. The man left his spear, focused, and got up from his chair. A neat step with the prosthesis, then a second step. His wife, Mei, was on the verge of crying and pissing. Niu Ben himself said that he couldn't believe it, and he said that he can walk normally now. Mai couldn't help but start crying, saying that this is great, this is really great, and Nicole, with a smile, comforted her and reminded her mother of her makeup. The children of the Niu family were happy that their father could walk again, and it was all very wonderful. Niu Ben held Mei's hand and asked her not to cry. Liu Feng happily said that after a little practice, Uncle Niu Ben would be able to walk just like everyone else. The man looked at him, pulled away from his wife, gathered all his sons, and went to Liu Feng. The guy got a little excited and asked what they were doing, and the male half of the Niu family unanimously turned to the young master, Liu Feng, and said that they would be his sword to slay his enemies. And even if they had to give their lives for it, they wouldn't flinch. And they saluted. Liu Feng smiled, walked up to Uncle Niu Ben, and said that he was sincerely grateful to them for their faith in him. And he told the man that he was now the steward of this castle, and that he would teach Liu Feng how to run this city. In a certain food store, someone shouted that a letter had arrived from Baron Omar. They asked him what he wrote. Someone grinned and said that the plan to capture Xi Yang City was about to start. In the morning in this shop, there was an indignant question. What? This peasant was indignant and asked, "What are 3 copper coins for 500 grams of grain?" And he asked why there weren't 2 coins yesterday. The salesman smiled nastily and said that yesterday, it was yesterday, and today, it's today, and whether the peasant likes it or not. Christian was terribly angry and was about to respond with a couple of affectionate words, and the fat salesman thought that the prices were raised by order of Baron Omar, and that the peasants are stupid. Let them just accept their fate. People outside the window of this shop somewhere rushed. Someone said that he had heard that the city lord's castle would start giving out food for free. And someone suggested that we go check it out and see for ourselves. The guy who wanted to buy grain got angry and asked the seller that he wanted to raise his prices. And then I sent him and said that he would not buy anything. I threw the sack of grain on his desk. The unpleasant salesman asked in shock if they were giving out food for free, and exclaimed, "What the hell?" The sound of a metal cymbal rang through the village. This was Uncle Newben's way of summoning the people. When the ordinary people began to gather, he told them to come and look at their vacancies, and also said that they were hiring clerks, hunters, and strong men, with a good salary. There were notices on the board, one of which was for hire, and it said clerks. 120 copper coins per month. Hunters. 120 copper coins per month. Strong people. 60 copper coins per month. When people saw this, they didn't believe it and started to get indignant. Someone said that how can the salary be so high? And it's all a hoax. Someone said that how can a noble person be so kind? Someone said that it was twice as much as the previous lords. And there are also those who said that he was definitely trying to deceive them. Then the crowd began to part and turn. The city lord loudly told them that he was Liu Feng, and he always keeps his promises. The people of Aksai Yang City saw their lord Liu Feng and couldn't believe it was him. He was wearing a different and chic outfit, and Mina was walking next to him in a maid outfit. People started admiring him and saying how beautiful he was. Someone started discussing his clothes and saying that he had never seen one before. And someone looked at Mina, thought that she was his servant, but it still looks great. Liu Feng and Mina approached Uncle Niu, and then Liu Feng turned to him and said that now he would take care of it. Uncle Niu nodded in agreement. Then Liu Feng turned to his people and asked them to listen to him. And then he loudly said that everything that is written here is true, but still job candidates will have to pass the test, and he said that as long as everyone passes the test, they will not only receive a monthly salary. Then the people felt the delicious smell of food and thought, "What is this smell?" And it smells very tasty. And Liu Feng continued to say that they could also eat this food as much as they wanted, and he pointed to the side where there was a huge mountain of roasted pigs and a big pot of delicious noodles. But there were also delicious portions of beef noodles on the table. The people's mouths watered at the sight and smell. Someone thought that you could die for this smell, and someone looked at the roast boar and admired. There were also those who looked lovingly at the noodle plate. Liu Feng asked the people if anyone wanted to try it. I told them they wouldn't lose anything anyway. Sin Qi turned to old man Bafu and told him that everyone seemed to want it, but if it was a trap, it might end badly. Bafu told him that he would let the old man start. Liu Feng sat down at the table, flanked by Mina and Uncle Niu. Liu Feng asked the people who wanted to be the first. Old man Bafu among the crowd stretched out his hand with a stick and shouted what he wants. He came up to the desk and said he wanted to try out as a clerk. He gave the parchment to Liu Feng, saying that he had written something. Liu Feng took the letter and unfolded it and began to read the contents. It said that old man Bafu had a dream. The dream is that one day every resident of Aksai Yang City will be able to eat their fill, wear warm clothes, and best of all, eat meat every day. And also that he dreams that one day everyone will be able to live in houses without holes and sleep in warm beds. Liu Feng thought that old man Bafu's writing wasn't bad after reading it, and even more surprising, his concern for the well-being of others. He told the old man aloud that he had passed, and from now on, he is the clerk of Aksai Yang City. Liu Feng turned to Nicole and asked her to serve the old man some beef noodles as well as roast pork. Nicole carried the tray to the thoughtful old man. He drooled at the sight and smell of the delicious food. He clutched the tray and told her to give the old man a taste as soon as possible. After recovering a little, he coughed and said that the old man would try it first, on behalf of everyone else. I started eating noodles. When he tried it, the old man's face changed in an instant. People noticed this and started asking what was wrong with old Bafu and if he had been poisoned. Sin Ki immediately walked out of the crowd with a knife and shouted that it was a trap after all. He shouted to Uncle Bafu and said that he would save him, and rushed into the fray. Mena immediately became alert and was ready to respond to Sin Ki's strike. But then old man Bafu said it was so delicious, and even shed a tear of happiness. Sin Ki stumbled and fell to the ground in shock. Old man Bafu went on to say that he had never eaten anything so delicious and felt like he had lived his entire life in vain. Then he started laughing. Sin Ki turned to Uncle Bafu and, in a frightened but angry tone, told him not to make such a frightening expression when Bafu was agitated. Liu Feng, Ming, and Uncle Niu simply didn't say anything. But people immediately got excited and started discussing it. Some people asked, "Is it really so delicious?" And they said they wanted to go and try it. Others suggested that he go and enlist as a soldier, and someone said that he was literate and he wanted to work as a clerk. Nuda was standing near the field of conscripts. He shouted for everyone to pay attention, and she said that if they could walk on a balancing log, cross an obstacle course, pass through a thorny area, and climb over a high wall, they would pass the test. Sin Ki stood among the crowd and thought that everyone had left, so why not give it a try? Liu Feng, Mina, and Nicole were standing on the castle's balcony, watching everything that was happening. Liu Feng said out loud happily that everything was fine, and he didn't expect everyone to be delighted. He turned to Nicole, addressed her, patted her on the head, and said that it was all thanks to her skill. Nicole was all embarrassed and said that it wasn't that the young master had taught her well. Liu Feng had already turned to Mina, wanted to pet her too, and only managed to say that he was grateful to her as well. How Mina had pulled away and told him that he could say whatever he wanted, but he kept his paws off her. Liu Feng said that he just wanted to thank her, and that her suggestion to use food to attract everyone to participate was a very good idea. Mina grunted and walked away from him. Liu Feng was upset and thought that he almost stroked her ears. Nicole watched all this and thought, after all this, what does this girl mean to little brother Liu Feng? And that she looks very dangerous, but little brother Liu Feng doesn't even seem to be paying attention. Meanwhile, on the conscript field, people were trying to pass the obstacle course, thinking only of beef noodles and pork. It was very hard for everyone. People were constantly dropping out of obstacles. Fell off a log, Nuda shouted out. The girl's dress caught on the wire, so she's out. Fell off the rope, also dropped out. Uncle Niu watched this and said out loud that he didn't know where young Master Liu Feng got such things from, but this course would be difficult even for their new family, even though they had been training since they were young, let alone these people who had never trained in their entire lives. People complained that someone had taken something for themselves, but for someone it was very difficult. Uncle Niu thought to himself again, if this continued, how would they be able to recruit even a single soldier? Liu Feng was sitting at the table and reading the book The Art of War. He exhaled and said that he didn't expect so few people to pass the tests. Then Nicole called out to him, calling him young master. Liu Feng turned his head and saw a girl with a tray. She told him she brought something to eat. She put a plate on the table for him and told him it was from a freshly baked red bean pie and a cup of coffee. Liu Feng thanked her. He took a piece from the plate and said how soft and sweet the aroma was, and when I tried it, I said it was so sweet, but not cloying either. He turned to Nicole and said that her skill amazed him. Nicole was embarrassed and timidly said that she was glad that the young master liked it. But then from the plate, someone took all the pieces of pie. It was Mena who was sitting on the couch eating them, and she said out loud that they were really delicious. Nicole forced a smile and said she was glad she liked it. In the back of her mind, it was a small mental trauma for her. She thought that she had been doing this all morning just for Liu Feng's little brother, and now she can't believe that Mena just took everything away. I thought it was all gone, but then someone addressed Liu Feng as a lord and said that something bad had happened. It was Bafu. He came along with Uncle Niu. The man called him young master and said, right now, the townspeople are preparing to leave the city and beg. Liu Feng spat out his coffee in surprise. He put the mug down on the table and asked what was wrong. Uncle Niu started saying that anyone who couldn't pass the test wouldn't be able to get provisions. And he said that in addition, these vile grain merchants were waiting for this opportunity to raise the price of food by 30%. Bufu had said that everyone was starving now. Uncle Niu addressed Liu Feng as a young master and asked if he could soften the recruitment standards a bit. Mina listened to the conversation and began to hush with a grin. She said the test was so simple and yet they were such weak people. Uncle Niu was angry and wanted to be rude to her, but Liu Feng slammed the table and called out to Knight Niu Ben. I told him straight out that the standards would not be lowered. Niu Ben and Bufu were about to protest, but Liu Feng continued to say that, however, as for merchants who profit from other people's misfortunes. Outside the food stall, Liu Feng, Old Man Bufu, Knight Niu Ben, and that unpleasant merchant were all gathered. The merchant forced a smile, turned to the city lord, and asked what brought him here. Liu Feng, in turn, asked him if he was the one who increased food prices by 30%. And he said that this huckster was arrogant and that it was a monopoly speculation. And another thing, if he put them in this position, B must really want to get the 5th point. Liu Feng swung his leg out to kick him and kicked him in the stomach with all his might. But nothing happened. The merchant grinned, stroked his mustache, and didn't budge an inch. Liu Feng thought in embarrassment, so this is the power in the fat layer. Then the merchant began to say that he was selling grain, and other people were buying it. And if they don't like that the prices are too high, then they just have to buy it. He asked with a grin if there was any problem with that. Liu Feng became angry. He pulled Niu Ben's sword out of its scabbard and pointed it at the merchant. And he told the merchant that how dare he use grain as a means of profit. And he said that it seemed to him that the merchant did not think that he was the lord of this city. Then the merchant smiled nastily, pushed the sword away from him, and asked Liu Feng to calm down. And he said that according to the kingdom's law, grain merchants are free to set their own prices. He asked if it was possible that the lord intended to defy the law. Liu Feng turned to Old Man Bufu. He said that the merchant was right and that there really was such a law. The merchant put on an honest face and said that the grain merchants, honestly conduct their small business in accordance with the law. He wanted to ask Lord what he was doing. In his head, he thought that with Lord Omar's support, he wouldn't be afraid of a brat like Liu Feng. Liu Feng also thought, what the hell, who would have thought that this merchant would cause him so much trouble? And it looks like he won't be able to handle it today. In fact, he calmly told him that it looked like they weren't going to lower their price. Since that's the case, when the time comes, he'd better not regret it. The seller laughed and said that let them be sure, when they set the price, they will certainly regret it. When Liu Feng, Old Man Bufu, and Knight Niu Ben walked away from this vendor, he also shouted to them to be careful on the road. Liu Feng angrily said that he should just wait and see. People on the streets were outraged, asking what they should do now. It was also said that the price of grain had risen again to 10 copper coins per kilogram, and the price of processed wheat has risen to 14 copper coins per kilogram. And they were outraged about who in general can afford such a thing. Other people were supportive and said that if this continued, they would starve to death before the autumn harvest. And someone just swore and said that these unscrupulous grain merchants always raise prices at this time of year. Old Man Bufu walked past the indignant crowd to the bulletin board. He had a piece of parchment in his hand, which he hung on the bulletin board. People immediately became interested in what was hung there. The announcement read, Haiyang City will be rebuilt. A home renovation company. Recruitment of a large number of people. Stonemasons, masons, movers. Salary, 500 grams of wheat per day. For people responsible for construction, as well as literate people, working hours are increased by 20%. A strange guy asked Old Man Bufu, everything written there is true, and asked that the city lord really needs so many workers. The old man coughed into his fist and said that everyone should be sure that it was all true, and that if any of them are interested in any of these jobs, they can start right away after they apply at the city lord's mansion. The people began to rejoice. They said that they believed Mr. Bufu and that that was why they would go. The old man was given a plan for the construction of buildings. People sawed planks, dragged sand, and made cement. In general, the construction work went on as usual. After a while, the guy next to Old Man Bafu shouted for everyone to line up for their food. People thought that there was really food and it was all very wonderful. At night, 3 clerks gathered at a table in a food store, one of them the fat and unpleasant one. One of them said that, alas, no one had bought anything in the last few days. Another told him that fuck them all and that they should just die. That nasty peddler was biting off a leg of meat and told them to hold back their pathetic little thoughts, and also said that they overestimated this boy. One said that this Liu Feng was giving out food for free and asked how they would sell their grain then. The fat salesman held up 3 fingers and said 3 days. The city lord's grain reserves will last no more than 3 days. Another seller asked just 3 days, and he asked how many other ways this child could think of to stop them. The fat, obnoxious salesman asked if it was a nuisance and said they had nothing to worry about. When the time comes, they can all make a ton of money in one fell swoop. The other vendors laughed and said he was right. Liu Feng sat at his desk with a serious face and tried to draw a city plan. He was distracted by Nicole addressing him as the master of the city. Liu Feng turned his head in her direction and asked what was the matter. Nicole, a little embarrassed, began to say that it was a good thing that he was rebuilding all the houses and even gave the workers grain for it, however. Liu Feng immediately asked, however, what? And the girl began to say that the stocks of their storerooms will not last long. The people continued to work hard, build and receive a large amount of grain for this, but people at the distribution began to ask why there is so little grain today. The guy who was helping Bafu turned to him and informed him that the grain had run out. Old Man Bafu told him that he had already informed the Lord about it. He's already trying to do something. Liu Feng was standing on the balcony of his castle. Nicole came to him, addressed him as a young master, and told him that there was no more grain in their storerooms, and she doesn't think it will be delivered any time soon. Liu Feng smiled at her and told her not to worry, he would find a way. The people at the giveaway were getting angry. They asked why they don't give out grain. They said it took so long and they were starving to death. The fat salesman and other salesmen were gathered near the queue, and the fat salesman laughed maliciously and asked what they had here. He asked if the lord of the city didn't want to pay the bills. He turned to Old Man Bafu and told him to hurry up and distribute the food. I asked him why he had stopped. He pointed to the people and said that they were all hungry while waiting. Old Man Bafu started to say what, but the obnoxious merchant interrupted him and asked if they really had run out of provisions. People heard this and started to get angry. Someone started shouting that their child was waiting for him to bring food, and someone angrily resent. Old Man Bafu started shouting for everyone to calm down and just wait a little longer, and then the food would be distributed to them soon. The nasty salesman pretended to ask that of course this is so, and he asked the Old Man Bafu that he had really run out of grain, and whether the city lord has encountered any difficulties, and maybe they need help. The other vendors began to agree and say that how could the city lord be in trouble? Even if he didn't have any food left, he could just buy a supply of grain. Why do they even need help? And they said that it would be better for Liu Feng to distribute food quickly. He shouldn't leave people without food after a whole day of hard work, and especially when children and the elderly are waiting for them at home. People heard all this perfectly well and began to talk. So they got angry and outraged voices started shouting from the crowd. Someone shouted that at this rate he would starve to death. Someone asked when the hell Liu Feng would be coming, and he said it was almost dark. And someone was fiercely demanding that they be given their grain. Just as angry and hungry people began to shout that a whole day of hard work, and they still did not distribute grain. And they shouted that they had been deceived again. Old Man Bafu understood the whole problem of the situation and was beginning to worry. He poked one guy with a stick and asked him what the hell he was doing. Does he want a riot? This guy's friends saw this and started shouting angrily that this old fool dared to go against them. The crowd began to gather around the old man and the guy who was helping distribute the grain. People said that Old Man Bafu made them work, but he didn't give them any food. This is a big hoax. And they said we should kill him, Kill that lousy dog." Old Man Bafu was fighting off people, asking them how they could be so ungrateful. I asked them if they'd forgotten who really helped them. But the crowd didn't listen to the old man. They started beating him and the guy who was helping them. But then there was a loud shout that said enough was enough. It was Li Feng with Ming. Li Feng addressed the crowd and asked what the hell they were doing here. People calmed down a little after seeing the city lord here, and Li Feng repeated his question, asking what the hell was going on here. And he said that those who would cause trouble again should not come to work tomorrow. The crowd was taken aback and frightened by this, so the crowd immediately fell silent and retreated from the old man and the guy. The boy turned to Ba Fu's grandfather and asked him if he was okay. The old man just said he was a lord, just in time. The obnoxious merchant asked Liu Feng when he would distribute the grain already, and said that people already want to go home and have dinner. Liu Feng gave him an unpleasant look and addressed the crowd, saying that the grain would definitely be distributed. I asked them to wait a little longer. One of the vendors said what Liu Feng is waiting for, and he said that all the people were already hungry and couldn't wait any longer. A fat and obnoxious salesman took out a white handkerchief from somewhere and said that this was it. He pretended to wipe away his tears as he continued to say that he was asking Liu Feng to take a look at these people. After a day of hard work, the kids are waiting for them with food at home. And he said that even if he is indifferent to adults, he should not forget about children. And loudly, so that all people could hear him, he announced that today, for the sake of saving the children, he was ready to risk everything. He told Li Feng that they should just send someone to their warehouse to pick up the grain, and that there is enough grain for everyone. People, hanging their ears, believed this seller and began to say that he was so sincere about it. Li Feng thought to himself, so that's what he needed. When Li Feng went out to buy grain, this seller had set him an extremely high price, which then Li Feng had no choice but to suffer in silence. Li Feng walked towards that fat and obnoxious salesman. Walking up close to him, he asked him what he really thought people could afford his food. The shop assistant called him Mister and said that he had already told him that everyone was swallowing. I asked him how he could still think about money, and he said that his grain is a little expensive, only 20 copper coins per kilogram, but it is already a difficult task for any person to make such a long and difficult journey to stock up on supplies. He began to wipe away his tears again and plaintively asked if money was a problem for him. He'd also asked that Liu Fei wouldn't wait until people had nothing to eat. The crowd heard all of his speeches and began to actively support him. They said it was true, it was a little expensive, but they worked all day, and so did the people who were waiting for them at home. Others said their children hadn't eaten much in the last few days. They went to the Lord and asked him to do something about it. Mina looked at Liu Feng and thought that he didn't seem like he was going to do anything. The sunset turned the sky pink and orange. Chuang asked the city lord if they were going to distribute grain or not. The crowd that had gathered around them froze in anticipation, and Li Feng felt a lot of annoyed stares at him. The crowd was getting impatient, nervous, and angry, and he could feel it. The merchant only added fuel to the fire. He quipped that it looked like it was time for everyone to leave. After all, their lord doesn't want to buy any grain for them. He doesn't care that they worked so hard for him. And he doesn't care if the relatives waiting for them at home are still alive, whether they are children or the elderly. The crowd believed these words and became enraged. People shouted that they should get the food they earned today. They were waving their fists and threatening to break into the castle and eat up all the lord's supplies if he didn't hurry to deliver the grain. Liu Feng looked startled as the crowd was about to head towards the castle. Nervous sweat trickled down his forehead. The fat man noticed it. With a triumphant smile, he gloated that after looking at the power of the elders, this brat was unlikely to be as sincere and kind in the future. Chuang and his men began to laugh loudly at the confusion they saw on the young master's face. They believed that they had defeated him. But suddenly, some of the people in the crowd started to stop. One of the peasants pointed ahead, drawing everyone's attention. At the city gate, Nuda first appeared. He was riding a horse, and he looked very tired. Behind him was his father, and New Ben's horse was harnessed to a cart. That, in turn, was filled to the brim with sacks of grain. Bringing up the rear of the procession was a similarly sweaty Nuar. The faces of the townspeople and Liu Feng shone with joy. The red-haired fat man took a step back in shock. Ben stopped the cart next to Feng and gave a loud report, so it was heard by everyone who was standing in the square right now. He and his sons completed the task that the young master had set for them, and the grain arrived. Thanks to the foresight of the young lord, who allowed them to leave the city a few days ago, they were able to buy grain. And it was bought as much as he ordered. Chong's jaw dropped in disbelief. He'd been tricked again. Liu Feng thought of buying grain from a nearby city. How could he? Liu Feng stopped paying attention to the red-haired schemer and asked Bofu to pass on his order. It's time to start distributing grain. The crowd erupted in cheers. They lifted their young lord in their arms, rocked, tossed, and wished for long life. After all, they were a little hasty with their conclusions. One of Chuang's assistants asked what they would do now. He growled weakly. How did that brat get to him? We'll have to lie low and wait for an opportunity. The distribution was completed a little later than usual, but the workers returned home again that day with food for their families. In the early morning, before even the sun had risen, young Lord Liu Feng was sleeping soundly in his bed. But suddenly, the door to his bedroom creaked. Someone stealthily approached the young master's bedside. An ominous shadow fell over his face, but it was just Nicole. She brought Feng's breakfast, but she couldn't resist admiring it. Nicole thought he was the most beautiful man in the world, and she couldn't stop looking at him now either. She couldn't understand how little brother Liu Feng's sleeping face could be so beautiful. After looking around and making sure that there was no one else in the room, Nicole leaned over the sleeping Feng to give him a secret kiss at least once. It wasn't a big deal, was it? Suddenly, a grumpy voice sounded very close by, asking what was she doing. Nicole jumped out of the way and saw Mina standing next to her. Ketchero crossed her arms and looked accusingly at the human girl. Nicole blushed, but since the best defense was to attack, she mimicked Mina's gesture and asked in displeasure why Mina was walking around without making a sound. Only her cheeks, flushed with embarrassment, gave her away. Mina reminded that she is not only a representative of the cat tribe, but also a warrior. The girls' voices woke Liu Feng up. He sat up in bed and yawned widely, stretching until his back cracked. When he saw the two of them, he asked what was going on. Nicole didn't immediately know what to say, but she remembered just in time that she hadn't come empty-handed. She grabbed a tray of fresh, rosy buns and a glass of milk from the table, saying that she had just brought little brother Liu Feng breakfast. Our hero took a glass from the tray and noticed that the girl had a hard day, and she did not need to take on another responsibility. Mina grabbed one of the buns from the tray and announced with her mouth full that the so-called training camp was over. Liu Feng rejoiced at the good news. Mina was indeed his talisman, to which the cat girl said that everyone was waiting for him, and he should hurry up. Then she went out, finishing her bun as she went. Nicole thought sadly that she didn't understand why little brother Liu Feng was protecting Mina, since Mina was treating him very badly. While she was thinking, our hero managed to change his clothes. He said that he would be back for dinner and really wanted to eat her stewed pork. Nicole smiled sheepishly and said that she would be happy to make it. A huge crowd had gathered outside Xi Yang City's training camp. They were the toughest guys in town. The crowd was discussing whether they were really going to get free food, but most people were sure that Lord Liu Feng always kept his word. On the wall outside the camp was the city lord himself, Mina, and Knight Yuben. The latter was wearing a military camouflage uniform that Liu Feng had obtained in his home world. He reported that the people standing at the bottom were selected strictly according to his requirements. Liu Feng praised his manager for the work done. Then he began his speech to the crowd by addressing them as future soldiers. The reason they didn't pass the last test is because they weren't getting enough nutrition and weren't prepared. Thus, the city lord is here to offer them free grain, provided that they all train hard with Knight Yuben. They will be given a second chance to become soldiers next month. If they pass the exam this time, not only will they be given food, but the soldier's entire family will also be exempt from taxes. Liu Feng's promise was as generous as possible. The people, unaccustomed to such noble rulers, could not contain their joy. They began chanting long life wishes to their lord. There were calls not to wait, but to start training as soon as possible. Our hero agreed with them, and New Ben blew his whistle behind him, which Feng also bought in an ordinary supermarket near his home in the modern world. Ben went down to the crowd and introduced his sons as trainers to the future soldiers. Li Feng had also obtained camouflage uniforms for all of them. The crowd was divided into groups, but it was more on the principle of who was closer to whom. Thus, the burden was divided equally between the new brothers. Ben announced the start of training. However, something went wrong from the very beginning. The peasants were not even ready for simple training. One set fire to his pants while trying to jump over an obstacle in the form of a burning crossbar. Another discovered a fear of heights while trying to climb the rope and threw a tantrum before he was halfway up the rope. And someone was able to get to the top of the wall only by stepping on the head of a comrade climbing after them. This caused a lot of guys to start slowing down their training, arguing about who would go next, and trying to avoid going to the training ground in every possible way. New Ben's face, looking down at the mess from the wall, was getting darker by the minute. Li Feng patted his knight on the shoulder and noticed that he was clearly facing a rather difficult task. This made Uncle New angry. He leaned over the wall and barked at the loafers to run to the firing range. Those who do not finish today's training will lose their lunch. This forced the farmers to run more actively and return to training. Mina laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. But suddenly, she thought of the guys she had traveled with before. She also had a lot of fun when she trained with Henry and the others. She wondered how they were doing. At this time, somewhere south of Yang City, a bonfire was burning in the depths of the cave. In this place, a motley tribe of beastmen were hiding, moving south in the hope of escaping the coming frost and evil humans. A boy with horns named Fuji stood in front of the blonde fox girl, clenching his fists. He reminded her that second big sister Minna still hadn't returned. It's been more than 7 days. Anri asked irritably, what does he want her to do? That fool Mina has to take care of herself. Or is he saying that they should also fall into the hands of humans? Her two fox tails flicked back and forth in exasperation. Fuji exclaimed that big sister should do something. Henry replied in a dissatisfied voice that their priority task was to immediately head south and find more food. Otherwise, they will all starve to death. A whole camp of hungry beastmen was set up in the cave. Small children screamed with hunger, and their mothers could not calm them down. Some even lay on the straw without strength, because they did not eat for several days in a row. But Fuji said he couldn't go south without his second older sister. Two of his friends, Bear Man and Pig Heel Guy, supported him. They couldn't drop the mine. The boy called to go kill those people and save the second big sister. They all trooped out of the cave. Henry loudly demanded that they stop and come back quickly. Her ears pricked up in anger. Henry loudly told her stupid brothers to stop and come back quickly. But her friends ran out of the cave, clearly not listening to her. The fox girl leaped high, did a somersault over the heads of her friends, and landed on one foot right at the cave's exit. But she lost her balance and fell face first into the stone floor with a shameful squeal. Her friends were confused and thought that she shouldn't try to do such fast movements if she didn't know them well enough. Henry got to her feet, dusted herself off, and continued her speech as if nothing had happened. She asked where her friends had lost their brains. Where were they going to get her back from? They had no idea where Minna was. Fuji asked what they should do then. The fox sighed and replied that first of all it was necessary to go to the nearest town in search of any traces. Henry thought Minna was a fool. She was supposed to be a shadow warrior, but they will definitely come for her. The next day, the horned boy set off towards the nearest town. Henry wrapped a handkerchief around his head to cover the horns. Fuji thought that his older sister was a bit strange. She insisted that she didn't want to save Mina, but she obviously already had those handkerchiefs ready. The boy came to Yang City and was surprised to find that the city was being rebuilt in full swing. Some houses were dismantled, and in their place others were built, new and more durable. He was just wondering what was going on when the smell of delicious food hit his nostrils. When he came to the smell, he saw a whole pot of hot tomato stew. The smell was so delicious that his stomach rumbled loudly. The pink-haired girl who was preparing rations for the workers noticed him. When she saw that a hungry boy had come to the cauldron, she offered him something to eat. And if he went to work for Lord Liu Feng afterward, he would be able to take more food with him in the evening. Fuji thought of his hungry clansmen in the cave, the screams of toddlers, the moans of exhausted adults, and he demanded to sign him up for a job. All day the boy actively helped at the construction site. I ran around with a cart, carried building materials, and helped pack them. The rest of the workers couldn't understand why the kid had so much physical strength, but when evening came, Fuji received a reward for his hard work, a bag of grain. But the poor thing had forgotten all about himself. He only had enough energy to enjoy the food. He was shaking all over with fatigue and hunger, so he lost his footing and fell as soon as he moved slightly away from the crew. Before he lost consciousness, Fuji noticed that the same girl was running towards him. The fading mind only had time to think that all humans were dangerous, but the next moment he sat up in bed with a jerk. Looking around, he realized that he was in an unfamiliar and obviously human room. He saw his bag of grain and handkerchief lying on the table beside him. The boy clutched at the horns. The handkerchief really wasn't on his head. This means that it was discovered. The pink-haired girl who had invited him to work came into the room. She brought him a whole bowl of rice porridge and offered him more food. After all, it was from hunger that the poor thing lost consciousness. Fuji jumped to his feet on the bed and pressed himself into the corner. He demanded to know what she was up to. The girl only replied that her name was Linara and gave a friendly smile. The boy demanded that she not come. He was a beastman, and if she made him angry, then he ran the edge of his hand over his neck. The girl raised an eyebrow. He repeated the gesture a few more times, but it didn't seem to be understood. Linara just laughed and asked, "Are all beastmen so playful?" Fuji froze and asked in confusion, "Isn't she afraid of the beastmen? And in what sense are they playful?" The girl replied with a warm smile that of course she wasn't afraid. Also, Lord Liu Feng has a catchroll walking around with him, and it doesn't look so bad either. It dawned on the boy that this might be the second older sister. Fuji jumped off the bed and grabbed the stunned rescuer by the arm. He eagerly asked me to tell him what the catchroll looked like. Linara replied that she had long dark purple hair, eyes like grapes, and was very beautiful. This description accurately described the mine. The boy had to come back and tell them about it. Only then did he notice that he was holding Linara's hand. He abruptly released her hand and jumped out of the way. The boy wasn't supposed to trust people. Embarrassed, he realized that the pink-haired girl really wasn't afraid of him at all. To hide his embarrassment, he quickly grabbed a bag of grain from the table, his handkerchief, and rushed out of the house, right through the wall. Linara stared dumbfounded at the hole in the wall of her house, and thought that if he wanted to leave, he could just climb out the window. Why was it necessary to run to the breach through the wall? When Anri found out where Fuji was staying so long, she immediately scolded him. How could it work the same way that pitiful people do? She asked angrily, why didn't he just show his horns and say that he was a beastman? People would just run away quickly. Fuji quickly changed the subject and said that he knew where Manhwa was. The fox immediately started shaking the boy, demanding to know where he found it. Fuji had to beg his older sister to stop. When Anri released him, he fell to the stone floor on his back. After taking a deep breath, Fuji replied that the mine was caught by Liu Feng, the lord of Haxiyang City. The fox reported that he remembered these words. Under the cover of night, the Beastman rescue party headed towards the lord's castle. With short leaps, they leaped from one thatched roof to another, closing in on their target. They expected that there would be a lot of guards around. Henry, having assessed the situation, ordered them to proceed according to their basic plan. Almost all of the warriors had just started their training, which meant they were easy prey. It was very easy to knock out the guards. Even the short Fuji and his friend with the pig's heel could handle it, not to mention Fat Bear. When her friends knocked out all the guards, Mina praised them, and her face was full of ill-concealed triumph. Fuji looked at her pointedly. The fox snorted and turned away. I just added that when they're done here, we need to train more. As Fuji watched his older sister make it to the castle's balcony in a few jumps, He thought that Anri was very happy with all this, but didn't want to admit it. Liu Feng was sitting quietly on the sofa in his chambers at this time. He was reading the manhwa he had learned from his homeworld and drinking tea with Nicole's red bean pie. Manhwa was so stupid that he couldn't stop laughing. Looking forward to a delicious snack, he picked up one cube of the sweet treat from his plate and brought it to his mouth. But he froze, holding a piece of pie in front of his open mouth. There was a loud crack. The wall of his bedroom was unceremoniously breached, and two unfamiliar beastmen flew in. However, Henry flew right over his sofa, which extremely attracted the attention of the young lord. Fuji held up a knife and demanded that their older sister be returned to them. Only now it turned out that they were addressing an empty space. Liu Feng was behind them. The man asked in confusion who they were. To cover up the awkward situation, Fuji lunged at Feng to kill him right away, repeating his demand, but his knife clattered into the corner of the room. It was Mina who deflected the attack that was aimed at Lord Liu Feng. In the next second, the cat and the horned boy recognized each other. When their eyes met, they were confused. Fuji shouted that he would kill the despicable little man who dared to kidnap their older sister. Mina stopped him, telling him that they had misunderstood. She lives at his house to recover from her injuries. Liu Feng looked at the destruction and thought with displeasure, how can you kill people left and right? When Henry heard that her little sister was injured, she rushed to her side, hugging her tightly. She asked if she was all right and if she was in pain. Mina smiled softly at Chanterelle, patted her head, and told her that she was feeling better and didn't need to worry. The cat asked Henry if she didn't say that she shouldn't worry about her. Why didn't they go south? The confused vixen replied that she was worried about her. Fuji and the other fools were determined to save Mina. While Fuji was getting away from being called a fool, which hit him like a heavy frying pan, Liu Feng was looking at Anri with delight. A real tsundere loli fox girl. He was shocked. When everyone calmed down a bit, Feng invited Mina's friends to sit down. Henry asked suspiciously if the bastard had harmed their older sister. Mina said no. How could he do something like that? The young lord felt slightly annoyed by such accusations. Lisa grabbed Mina's hand and told them to hurry. Everyone is just waiting for her to go south. The cat gave Liu Feng a strange look and turned its back on him, taking a step towards the hole. But our hero asked her to stop. Liu Feng tried to stop Mina. Henry turned to him and asked him what he wanted. He replied that Mina had not yet fully recovered. Maybe they should stay here for a couple more days. There was hope in his eyes. Mina looked away and told him that he didn't need to worry about her. But our hero noticed that he wasn't finished yet. Everyone in the kingdom catches beastmen. Even if they go south, they might be in danger. Mina looked at his face and remembered all the good things he'd done for her. He fed her, washed her, helped her get rid of her wounds, gave her new clothes, and did his best to take good care of her. Sighing, Mina said that it would be up to Henry to decide. But their heartwarming conversation was interrupted by the sound of a rumbling stomach. The source was the belly of Fuji, who had not been able to eat all day. Liu Feng saw this as his chance. He prepared a whole pot of rice with tomatoes and eggs for the beastmen. They began to eat with gusto. Henry, having put only one spoonful of the treat in her mouth, fell into ecstasy. It seemed to her that she was a little fox cub running through the tomato fields after a flying egg. When the meal was over, Henry stroked her stomach, feeling full. She hadn't eaten such a delicious meal in a very long time. But then she shook her head, coming to her senses. Vixen couldn't believe that this man was so dangerous. He was cooking too well. Li Feng stepped out onto the balcony. Mina stood there alone, looking out over the sleeping city. Our hero jokingly asked her if she was not afraid that he would poison her friends. Mina turned to him and asked if he would have dared to do something like that. Feng replied that he certainly wouldn't do that. He asked the cat if it really decided to head south, and the cat replied that they had no choice. The wrath of the goddess of snow and ice was approaching. They won't survive without food. Liu Feng noticed that the south was so far away. Even though there are only a few cities along the way, do they even know how things are going there? What if someone tries to catch them again? Why don't the beastmen just stay in Xiyan City, where they'll be safe? Mina gave him a confused look and asked what they would eat if they stayed. Was he going to feed them every day? Sensing that he had a chance, Li Feng replied that they could work for him. While there is work, there will be food. Mina was surprised. She clarified whether he meant working together with farmers. He nodded but pointed out that if there were any special skills, you could find something else to do. The cat paused, then asked why he was being so kind to them. Our hero replied that he simply did not want to part with it. Mina's blush deepened. Liu Feng knew that the beastmen didn't trust ordinary people very much, and were worried that they would deceive them. But they'd been together for a while, and Mina knew what kind of person he was. So, why not stay? Mina didn't say anything, but turned away and went into the house. Liu Feng thought that he just didn't offer enough, but in reality, the kitty just didn't want to show him her embarrassment. Henry had received a beautiful pink pajama set from Liu Feng, and now she was showing it off in front of Mina. The clothes were very comfortable and much better than the clothes of the nobles. Mina took a sip of tea from her mug and said she was just lucky. They were the smallest clothes in town. Chanterelle pressed her hands to her chest and looked at her friend. Of course, she needed a lot more clothes. In a fit of envy, she threw herself at the cat. I started tickling her. Liu Feng, who was listening to the commotion behind the wall, was happy. Until he remembered that the beastmen would leave tomorrow. When the girls had calmed down and gone to bed, Mina suddenly asked Henry if they had to go south. Henry sat up in bed and looked into her older sister's eyes. Did she not want to leave because of that man? Mina looked away from her face and said that they really didn't know anything about the south. Can they survive there? Vixen asked in displeasure, did she really believe that person's words? Mina swung her legs off the bed and said no, of course not. But what he said made sense. Mina went to the window and continued talking. They do not know what dangers await them in the south and whether they will be able to survive there. They can all stay here. And even if there's trouble, they can handle it. Henry considered her words. In the morning, the rest of the beastmen saw their big sister in a very cute dress and found that she looked like a cute little princess. The traditional style was well combined with open shoulders, and the turquoise color was very suitable for the Chanterelle girl. However, they were outraged. Why did she have new clothes, and they did not? Henry replied that she could offer to wear one of her new dresses, but they declined in embarrassment. At this time, Li Feng appeared in the hall. He was so upset that he was going to have to say goodbye to his new friends that he looked like a corpse coming to life. Feng offered to accompany them, but the beastmen stopped him. Henry directly asked Master Liu Feng what kind of work he could offer them. Our hero froze, looking at them with big eyes. It took him a moment to grasp the meaning of the question. But when it did, a happy smile lit up her face. He asked if they really decided to stay. Mina replied that so far, yes, but if they found out that he was up to something bad, they would tear him to shreds. A happy Liu Feng assured them that they didn't have to worry about it. That evening, Mina and Henry heard Feng singing in the bathroom. Vixen asked what it was. Mina said she didn't know, but maybe he was crazy. Henry could only sympathize with the poor fellow. But in reality, Li Feng was very happy to be able to touch their ears. At dinner, Henry tried to tickle Mina. While the girl was laughing and begging her to stop, Li Feng was glued to their games and stopped paying attention to what he was eating. And Nicole, who was sitting next to her, couldn't take her eyes off Li Feng's little brother and thought how beautiful he was. But then our hero glanced at his watch. It was almost 7 o'clock. Liu Feng feigned a wide yawn and said that he wanted to sleep. Nicole noticed that the master always went to bed around midnight. What's wrong with him today? In response, he stretched and said that maybe this time he worked longer than usual. With a big yawn again, Liu Feng got to his feet and went to the bedroom, saying that he needed to get some sleep. He paused in the doorway and added that if anything happened, he should wait until tomorrow. Nicole promised that she would ask the others not to disturb him. Mina, on the other hand, pricked up her ears and thought that Liu Feng was a bit strange today. After locking the door to his chambers, Li Feng opened a passage to his home world. It was time for him to go back and buy a few things. For example, he needed more of a soldier's uniform. Our hero had the ability to move through space and time. He could only do this once a day, but it was very draining for his body. But it also allowed him to see the future and potential risks. After falling through the portal clumsily, Li Feng hit his head painfully on the headboard. How many times he moved around, but he still didn't figure out how to control his landing. Thankfully, no one had seen his shameful fall, and Mina would have laughed at him for sure. But it wasn't just one fall. As soon as Feng got out of bed, he tripped over a copy of Manhwa that was lying on the floor and fell down again. Without Nicole, he didn't know how to keep the house tidy at all. Finally, our hero got to the computer to do some shopping. He was going to teach these horse thieves a lesson. They will definitely beat them. His order did not consist only of military uniforms. He also needed several hundred iron spears and longbows. The seller was even surprised by this order. Li Feng explained that they were going to make a movie about the war in another world. Money doesn't matter. The director of the film said that he wants everything to be real, so they need authentic things. The seller replied that it would probably be a hit. He promised to poison the goods as soon as possible. And I asked for an autograph from the actress of that evil cutie. He liked her very much. Li Feng then promised that if the goods were genuine, he would send him an autograph. After finishing the dialogue, Feng got to his feet and thought that with the Watchers, he should be more than a city lord. Next, he had to go to the supermarket to buy something. He started for the door, then remembered that his outfit wasn't the best for shopping right now. He came to the store in his usual clothes. A t-shirt, jeans, and a cap that successfully covered his face. He collected purchases from a list to provide all the inhabitants of his castle with the necessary things. Other shoppers noticed how much the young man in the cap was buying. He looked like some kind of CEO, even if he was just shopping. As much as Li Feng wanted to not stand out, he couldn't do it. There were so many purchases that I had to ask the store staff for help. Toothbrushes, shampoos, wipes, all this was very necessary for him. The cashier stared in horror at the pile of boxes being unloaded in front of her. Li Feng even peeked out from behind them to apologize for the inconvenience, but the cashier recognized him. Our hero did not deny that he is the same Li Feng. The cashier looked around and whispered to him that she was crazy about his time travel novel. She followed every chapter of it. She asked him why he hadn't published anything for months. The cashier even swore that she wouldn't tell anyone. Li Feng tried to explain that he was very busy lately. But the girl immediately blurted out to him that a few days ago, his neighbor told him that he had not left the house for a long time. She knew he needed to be home writing, getting ready for his big hit. Of course, she was sure it was true. Our hero thought gloomily that it seemed time for him to move to another place, but he didn't show it, just noticed how much she knew about him. The cashier giggled in response, still not sure what conclusion she pushed him to. She finally started to run through her purchases, while Li Feng checked his list. At this time, Minna couldn't find a place in the other world. She had a feeling that Master Li Feng wasn't all right. She went to his bedroom and tried to enter, but the door was locked. Li Feng returned home after dark. He put the boxes on the bed and changed back into his armor. Then I opened the interspatial dimension. It was a kind of vacuum that only Li Feng could use and see. This is an unlimited space that did not depend on time. Things placed in this dimension remained in the same state they were placed in. Using the power of his fingers, Feng began to transfer the boxes to his spatial pocket. This superpower of his appeared after he received an electric shock. Our hero used the electric current in his palms to store and move things. During this process, Feng could freely control this space, and it was invisible to everyone else. When the last box was in place, Li Feng closed the portal and was about to return when he remembered the bag of burgers left on the table from the nearest fast food store. He bought them especially for his girls, and he hoped they'd like it. Mina had been pacing the corridor outside the city lord's chambers. Not even Li Feng's breathing could be heard from the other side of the door, and the cat still had very sharp ears. She knocked on the door. No reaction. Mina wondered if Li Feng was hiding. Or it's not even here at all. The cat girl narrowed her eyes, deciding to take out the door. At this very moment, a portal opened in the young lord's bedroom, and our hero returned. His bedroom as a place to move was the best option. Or so he thought, until Mina kicked the door open with a powerful kick. Entering the room directly on the fallen door, the cat did not see anyone. She asked aloud where Liu Feng might have been. She was told from under the door that she was standing on it. Mina jumped out of the way. To calm the kitty down, Liu Feng simply gave her a bag of treats. While eating burgers, Mina explained that she had been knocking on the door for a very long time, that she thought he had been killed. Or something like that. Liu Feng asked with a smile, did she kick down the door because she was worried about him? Mina blushed slightly and turned away. She said she just came to thank him for giving them the job. Our hero noticed that she was very strangely thanking people, pointing her finger at the lying door. While Mina was trying to get over her embarrassment, he asked her how she was going to thank him. Suddenly, he looked straight into her great colored eyes and asked if she would marry him. Not expecting such an offer, the cat girl choked on it. While she was trying to clear her throat, Li Feng reported that he was just joking and rushed to pour the poor girl a glass of water. But when he offered her a drink, Mina awkwardly pushed the glass with her fingers. It rolled over, and the water spilled all over her chest. They both stared at it for a moment, confused, after which they both started to panic. The two of them ran for a towel at the same time, causing them to collide, and the wet chest bumped right into Li Feng's face. He staggered back, tripped over the leg of the sofa, and fell to the floor. While trying to grab onto something, he accidentally grabbed Mina's tail. It certainly kept him on his feet, but the sound the cat girl made them both freeze in shock. Angered, Mina yanked the tail out of his fingers and slapped Li Feng's face with all her might. She waved her tail nervously, then turned around and demanded that he not tell anyone about her tail. She stormed out of the room. Li Feng remembered that in the animal world, it was said that the tail of cats is the most sensitive place, so he was flirting with her. At sunset, two dark-cloaked horsemen approached Xi Yang City. Their faces were covered by hoods. The peasants, who were picking up grain after the working day, did not pay attention to them, and that was a big mistake. Two of the workers were delayed at the construction site, and they returned home when it was already dark. They discussed the generosity of the city lord and how much this payment helps out their families. But then they saw a rider in the distance. They quickened their pace, hoping to get around the stranger, but he blocked their path. They couldn't even see his eyes, so they were even more afraid. Suddenly, a horseman snatched a sack of grain from the hands of a nearby peasant, but he grabbed it, not allowing it to be taken away. The worker shouted that he couldn't take his food. He'd worked all day for her. If she was taken away, what would his family eat? But the rider reared his horse. The sack stretched and tore, scattering the grain on the ground. After which, the rider simply walked on. Enraged by this, the peasant ran after the rider, accusing him of spoiling the food. But as soon as the poor man touched his boot, the rider, without much ceremony, cut him down with his sword. The other man froze in horror as he watched. He was so scared that he couldn't move. And when he came to his senses to call for help, someone clamped his mouth from behind and slashed at his throat. The second man in the raincoat threw the dead laborer to the ground, climbed onto his horse, and scolded the first for being an amateur. They also agreed not to kill anyone, so as not to attract attention to themselves. He explained that he just wanted to play with this stupid, dirty peasant, but he dared to get his shoes dirty. While they were talking, the riders disappeared into the darkness. Under the cover of night, merchants were having fun in the local tavern. Chuang and his band of thieving merchants. They drank wine and ate meat in the company of beautiful ladies, and those who just recently killed two innocent people drank with them. The tables were piled high with plates of skewered, greasy meat. The wine flowed freely, as if they hadn't just committed any crimes. In the morning, news of the dead workers spread throughout the city. No one could believe that their neighbors and comrades, with whom they had just spoken yesterday, had been killed. Many people began to say that it is better not to leave the house at night, because it is dangerous. A crowd formed around the place where the bodies were found, but the guards kept them away. The Lord was investigating what had happened. Liu Feng was furious. Apparently, those same horse thieves dared to kill its inhabitants in his own domain. He threatened to kill those behind it. Niu Ben, who was examining the bodies of the dead, noticed that it didn't look like horse thieves. In the first place, it wasn't the time for the autumn harvest yet, and everyone knew that Xi Yang City was very poor right now. Why would they come? Secondly, although there are differences between the wounds of both victims, in both cases they were clearly inflicted with sharp weapons. Horse thieves couldn't afford such weapons. And third, what was the most important thing? If they were horse thieves, why didn't they take the food? So saying, Ben showed the young master the scrap of sack, and pointed with his finger to the grains scattered on the ground. Liu Feng stared at it in horror. Uncle Ben was right. During lunch, Liu Feng couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Who could have killed those peasants and not taken the food? Then he looked at Mina, who was eating a sweet pie from Nicole's with a good appetite. Our hero said in a serious tone that he needed her help, but this mission is very dangerous, and he won't argue if she refuses. But the cat interrupted him and asked what she needed to do. And even without looking up from the food, Liu Feng stood up from the chair and squeezed the girl's shoulders. She even had to leave the food behind. He said she needed to go to a place at night and gather information, but it should not take any action. Mina only yawned in response and said that since it was going to be a night out, she needed to get some sleep. But Liu Feng stopped her.